Welcome back to another episode here on the Hard and Hustle podcast. And today's guest, her family actually fought for a home in Queens, and now she's helping thousands build their own in the heart of New York City. Sabrina, I ask you, you grew up in a tiny home in Queens. What did that really mean to you as a kid? And was there anything that you felt was missing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, first, thank you so much, Efrain, for having me here. It's so
Absolutely.
awesome to be on Heart and Hustle. Love the conversations that you have on this podcast. Yeah, born and raised in Jackson Heights, which back in the 80s was a predominantly Colombian neighborhood. My mother's Colombian, my father's Dominican. It was a Romeo and Juliet story to have a Colombian and Dominican together in the late 70s, early 80s.
Hmm.
Um, and we were very blessed. We had a home in Jackson Heights, and as I was getting older, the neighborhood was getting more unsafe, and so my parents were really looking to see, where else they could move. And some of the neighborhoods they were looking at, I remember my mom telling me the story. She would go to the bank, and then she'd be like, "No, you're never gonna be able. They're never gonna let your family in to that neighborhood." And honestly, it was through the grace of God. My dad had a friend who had a friend who had a older gentleman that was going to be moving out, and it was that connection that allowed us to start thinking about owning our first home in New York City. And it was, he gathered up, my grandparents had worked in factories, so they had gathered up some dollars, and
Hmm.
intergenerational living is very common in Latin households. And honestly, it was everybody coming together. It took a village to get us to a place where we had our first home. And to me, it changed the trajectory of my life
So
from
you,
that
you wouldn't
moment.
say you grew up missing anything. You tight knit family that really all supported each other.
We were very blessed. I mean, I think low income family, but full of heart, full of food, lots
Hustle.
of culture. So to me,
Yeah,
we were
hustle.
the richest we could be. And I think, but it really does stem, Efrain, from like having stability in the home really
Yeah.
sets the tone, right? For
Yeah.
anyone, and you're able to, as much as things can be going wrong, as much as someone might lose a job or have to be out finding something else, having the stability of being in a safe, decent, affordable place to live sets that tone, right?
You know what's so important that you said in this whole thing that I still truly believe till today is you said connection because your dad had connections, right? And that's really in the nonprofit space. That is so huge for us is to build that connection, build that network of people, and understand how to communicate with people. Do you feel like seeing your dad in this space, communicating and networking with people and understanding real estate, because you weren't always in the nonprofit space. You actually got into the real estate first. Is
Yeah.
that what led you to your first career before you get
Oh,
into your
without a
second career?
doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, my dad was a small businessman, and I saw him, go through the motions, right? That roller coaster ride of
Yeah.
success, and then, some
Failures,
lows and
yep.
some highs. And to be honest with you, I was averse to it. And my parents, first generation, was like, you graduate college, and you go out and you make as much money as you possibly can. Like that's all that matters, is make as much money as you can. And so
Hmm.
I started in the private sector. I started in commercial real estate. I leased, managed, developed shopping centers in DC, out in San Francisco. And I was, from a financial perspective, felt very secure. But I was not doing what I was put on this earth to do. I was not connected to what I was doing. And to be frank, I was making a lot of very wealthy people wealthier, right? And it just did not feel connected to what I was put on this planet to do. And so that's how I learned to hop. And one of the things that I learned early on to that point, and I think about my grandfather because I've always been selling. Like since I was 14 years old, I've been working. I worked at Aldo
Hmm.
Shoes in high school, and I asked my grandfather, who was a salesman, like, what advice would you give me, right? Like, what should I know? And he said, "There's only one piece of advice any salesperson ever needs to know, and it's the worst thing they're going to tell you is no. So ask, right?" And
Yeah.
and that I would say to networking too, right? Like the more you open yourself up to making those connections, you never know. It might not be for that moment, but later on down the road, and as I've gotten into my career, I've learned how some of the networks I built 20 years ago have
Yeah.
really supported me today.
You planted a seed. You planted that
Exactly.
seed 20 years ago. You watered it. You went out, and people don't realize watering it means you plant it today and you still go out and do these other
A
things. And
thousand
it'll
percent.
come back in full circle sometimes. And you ask yourself, how did I get here? And it's those moments, right, that you've done. I mean, your parents, your grandpa, your dad, mom, they all planted seeds. And now you're making decisions based off of what your mom and dad really instilled in you. We don't realize that, I think, when we're kids, right?
Yeah.
We're too smart. We don't want to hear anything. But I can always go back and think to myself, and we talked about plants a little early before getting on. That's my mom all day. She used to water these, not her. She used to make me water these plants and say, "Don't you overwater my plants," right? And I wasn't into plants, but when I got into it, I'm like, man, this is what I used to do for my mom all the time, and realizing that I actually loved it. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes you don't even know you love something because it was so far ago or so long ago.
Hmm.
Um, so I love that you're talking about that, but you then kind of say, you know what, I don't want to do any more commercial real estate. I'm leaving. How easy was it for you to go from a for-profit to a nonprofit? Did you
It
find any
was hard.
challenges? Was it an
It,
easy transition?
it was hard. I'd be lying if I said it was easy. So I mentioned I'd been working since I was 14. And listen, I loved the commercial real estate space. I love the built environment, right? So anything in real estate, I am naturally attracted to. So I knew that I wanted to stay within the industry, right?
Hmm.
But specifically in the track and the niche that I was in, I was not feeling fulfilled. And having been working since I was 14, never not having the next thing lined up, or I was very, very blessed. I've always worked very hard, but I was working, 16 to 18 hours towards the end there, and I was really burnt out. And I had one of those moments where it's like, the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Hmm.
I had just come back from my honeymoon. I had, worked all up until my wedding. I went on a very short honeymoon so I can come back to work. Came back to work. We had a big situation, and my boss goes, I tell my boss, wow, that was intense, right? My first day back, I was hoping to have a little bit more breathing room. And his response was, well, that's why you don't take vacation. And that,
That
Efrain,
was it.
that was it. And I had never in my life, ever, ever, ever left a job without having something else lined up. And I left.
Yeah.
I couldn't hold it. And I was like, I quit. It was like those TV sitcom moments. I was just like, I quit. Um,
Yeah.
and you can imagine my husband, who I just married, coming home and tell him that I just quit my job. But it just felt like I couldn't even hold it back. And it
Yeah.
felt in that moment equally terrifying, but equally exciting. And it opened up my like world in thinking I don't have to do this, right? I can
Hmm.
find other things to do. So I had done retail, I had done office, I hadn't done housing. And so this was almost 11 years ago now. And that was, I was out meeting people and having informational interviews and networking and planting seeds. And I was introduced to my predecessor at the time at Habitat, um, and hadn't thought really about the nonprofit space. But when I sat down and spoke with them and learned about this mission, about how they're building affordable homeownership for working class families, about how they do that in New York City, um, it just it felt it just felt very natural, right?
Hmm.
And it was a 2 hour informational. It was supposed to be like a quick breakfast. It ended up being 2 hours, and at the end of it, um, again, very blessed, they were able to create a position, and they wanted me to start right away. And so
I
that's
love
how
that.
I started at Habitat, and that was
I
10
love
years
the
ago.
story. I love the story, Sabrina, of getting uncomfortable. Not a lot of people do it. You know, people literally will stay in a job
Hmm.
and truly dislike it. But as you mentioned, it is a people think we should be chasing paychecks when in reality we should be chasing purpose, right? And the money will follow. All right, like you're in a good place. You're not struggling financially. Can you go make more money? Yeah, but the reward is truly on helping other people, right? Like that's where the reward really is. You feel happy that, man, maybe I didn't have that, but someone else because of me is now able to experience what I'm experiencing today.
Hmm.
You know, and it makes a difference because we're not just impacting adults, we're impacting kids. When kids get to
Oh my gosh.
get their own room, right? Get that bed. Like there's so much in there. But I really also want to talk about, you talk about working real young. And I'm about to throw a little shade out there. That's where the worth ethic comes from. Because I was with you. My first job was at 15 years old, you know, and I was paying my cell phone bill. I was already
Hmm.
paying rent, and at 18 years old, I'm already on my own. You know, I'm figuring out
Hmm.
life. Did I fail, as you mentioned? Yeah, but
Hmm.
all those were completely lessons that we were
Hmm.
learning along the way. Making the transition from for profit to nonprofit. What was those failures, if any, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think Efrain, you hit it on the nail on the head. I mean, the fear is financial, right? I'm coming from a first generation. I knew what it felt like when
Hmm.
things got so difficult that, if we had to skip a meal, if we had to do something, and I, to that point, worked, and I paid my fair share
Hmm.
of the bills for my family, and I still do that, right? And so that weight, that pressure that so many people feel is real, right? And so
Hmm.
it's scary to say, and it also feels selfish, right? To say, well, I want to do something that feels right for me, right? That this is more values aligned. And what I would say is you have to go with that gut, because to your point, like, I love the way you do that, is like chasing purpose versus paychecks, because you're absolutely right. And I think the money will come if you find what you love. It will get, like, God will find a way, the universe finds a way. um I am more blessed now than I have ever been in my life. I am more fulfilled now than I have ever been in my life, and that is, it was not easy. It was scary, right? It was scary to
Yep.
think, okay, I'm taking a pay cut. How am I going to adjust that with my family? But you figure it out, right? We are nothing if not resilient as people, um, and we will figure it out. And it allowed me to learn so much, right? Stepping into the nonprofit space allowed me to understand, when you remove the bottom line from being your primary driver, the world opens up. What can you do,
Hmm.
right? If you have enough, right? And you don't need to be chasing more, and you can pivot that investment into bettering working class families' lives, right? To your point, these families that we serve at Habitat, these are working people, right? 80% of the families we serve are single moms of color, right? They work two or
Hmm.
three jobs. They're paraprofessionals in schools in the daytime, then they're whole health homemades at night, and then
Yep.
maybe on the side, they're working at a restaurant. Like, they do all the right things, make too much money to qualify for any government assistance, but then don't make enough to be able to go to the market and achieve that dream. So it's just like you're spinning your wheels. And so when you think about living with dignity, living with pride, being able to know that I'm working hard and I have something to show for it, that matters, right? Apart from the fact of all the studies that show, to the kids, educational outcomes are so much stronger. 20% of the families we serve have college degrees, but 90% of their kids do, right? That stems from
Hmm.
that home,
Yeah.
whether it's health, right? And being able to focus on health, whether it's safety, whether it's becoming more civically engaged in their community because they are a part of it now. They feel invested in it because they own it. All of those things matter so much. And so for me, learning that space and understanding that made me think about, all right, what's next? Like, how do we scale this? How do we do more? And that's when I had the chance at Efrain to, um, after 5 years with Habitat, I went out and joined New York City, and I worked for Mayor De Blasio at the time at the Economic Development Corporation.
I mean, how cool is it? You know, that you bet on yourself, that you walked away with confidence, even though through the journey, it felt like, I'm pretty sure you've had to deal with a little imposter syndrome. Like, wait a minute, did I just do that? Maybe I should call him back. Maybe like, I. But it's something in you, as you mentioned. It was something in you, in us at times, that says you got to walk away,
Mhm.
right? And it's not being dumb. It is just listening
Yes.
to the man,
Yes,
right?
it's
Because
absolutely that.
a lot of times we don't, and then we go back to the same thing over and over, and we're expecting a change, but it's because you keep doing the same thing
That's
like
exactly
over and
right.
over. There's not going to change until you one day say enough is enough.
Mhm.
Like, I pride in who I am, and I, like, the man really said that's why we don't take vacations. What do you mean, to not have a work life balance? That's what you're
Right.
telling me?
Yep.
Like, another man was trying to control your household, you
Right.
know, and that's actually really crazy. But I do want to talk about the homes. You talked about the homes.
Mhm.
These are not things that are just given away. I think
Mhm.
people may just think it's just given away, but this is, there's sweat, there's equity in this, financial education, there's
Mhm.
sacrifice. Do you recall a moment that you saw that earned ownership really transform someone's life?
Oh my gosh. So there's a lot of stories, right? Efrain, in all these years, there's a lot of stories I have. Um, One story that I think, and it's only because I was with this homeowner just last week. Her name's Brenna, and she about 15 years ago. This is the beauty of Habitat, right? Is we've been in New York City building for 40 years. And Habitat, I mean, it's such a big brand, right? It's in
Yeah.
70 countries. It's been around for almost 50 years now. But few people know that in New York City, we have been building in the five boroughs for the past 40 years, right? So we have all these stories because we stay with these homeowners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, these are not homes that are given away. We build these homes with volunteers, with the city, with the state, and these are homes that are subsidized so that they can match a affordable amount for a working class family. But that working class family is putting in their sweat equity, right? They are learning how to become first time home buyers. They are taking the courses. They are in their volunteering also,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they purchase this home. They have a mortgage that they purchase, and that is their home. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in is we make sure whether it's a single family home in Southeast Queens or one of our multifamily, 60 unit co-ops in the Bronx, or whether we're preserving some of these limited equity cooperatives that have been around, like in Manhattan and the Lower East Side for 40 years, that
Mm-hmm.
are at risk of foreclosure, that we intervene and we help support. Whichever one it is, we stay with the families. We build relationships with these families. So we see them progress. So I think one story, I'll tell you about Brendan in a minute, but Don Cow, right? So when Jimmy Carter got
Mm-hmm.
got started with Habitat, the first place he ever swung a hammer was the Lower East Side in this building, Mascot Flats. You can visit it. It's between Avenue C and D, right down there on 6th Street. And it's a 19 unit co op building. Don Cow was one of the first homeowners who built alongside Carter for his unit.
Yeah.
He was, and this was in 1984. He was, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with AIDS at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and had was very obviously terrified. Right, he saw his friends passing away around him, but he now had this stable place to live. He was able to focus on his health. He got all the medical attention he needed. He got himself healthy, and because he had an affordable place to live, and he was able to get himself health wise all set, he decided to dedicate his life to LGBTQ youth in Lower East Side. And so he started helping at risk youth on the streets to the point where he started building out a nonprofit. Now you look 40 years later, he has helped serve tens of thousands of LGBTQ youth. And he talks about how he would have never been able to do that had it not been knowing that he had a stable place to call home. And that
Wow. Yeah.
ripple effect is massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Brenna in Atlantic Avenue, who's been there for 15 years, has become a community leader, right? She is civically engaged in her community board. She was able to help support. And that building, it's two buildings, 41 units from 15 years ago. All of the original homeowners are still there. Four passed away, and they gave it to their kids who are all living there. And so that community that they have built is so beautiful, right? And you talk about, you know, the building right after that. We have a district leader that came out of that. You have, so it's, the stories are so endless, right? It's so hard to
Yeah.
pick one because they all show the power of what homeownership can provide.
If the Heart and Hustle podcast has ever sparked any idea or made you think differently, do us a favor. Make sure to guys share this, post it on LinkedIn, or even text that nonprofit friend that you just have. Whatever works, this is what keeps the conversation going and allows us to just grow this community together. Seriously, we appreciate you. Long lasting impact. That's what's
Exactly.
being created,
Generational.
right?
That's right.
Um, while there's really good stories, right, the stories that you shared, we're still also kind of almost in a desperation because we still have 15,000 applicants that are applying and trying to get this, but still not enough homes.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, what is the situation there?
Here it's very easy. I think people like to overcomplicate the housing crisis. It's not that complicated. It is the
Hmm.
most basic economic principle there is. We have a supply and demand issue. Period. We have high demand, not enough supply. So we need to build more. So that's number one, right? Okay, but we've been building more. Why are we still in this crisis? Why? Because we have only, housing is not a one size fits all, right? We are
Hmm.
not, as humans, a one size fits all.
Yeah.
So we cannot build one size fits all housing. It cannot be all rentals. In New York City, you are barely scratching 30% homeownership rates. We have the lowest homeownership rates in the country. Okay, the average is about 60, and we're barely scratching 30. So you're looking at a city that is 70% renters. Now, listen, there's nothing wrong with rental housing. We need rental housing.
Yeah.
Some people will never want to buy a home, but I guarantee, and I can tell you from that 15,000, we had 15 homes in Southeast Queens that we built, single family homes. When we opened up that application pool, 15,000 applications. So it is not correct to say that people don't want
Hmm.
to own a home. They do. They just can't, right? And so what's happening is because we've only built one type of housing or certain types of housing, we have created, if you look at the housing as a continuum, right? We've created a choked flow. We have all this rental, but we are not giving any real space for affordable homeownership, right? And if you look at the families that we serve, those moms that I mentioned, right?
Hmm.
Most of them are coming out of public housing. Not because they want to live in public housing or in nicer buildings, it's because where are they going to go? You can only push the working class so far out. We're on an island, right? They can't be commuting 2 or 3 hours to get here. So now, as important as it is for that family to move into their new habitat home, you've also just opened up that public housing space for someone in supportive housing to graduate and move into, for someone in shelter to move into supportive, for someone on the street to move into the shelter, right? You have to create that
Yeah.
continuum and that flow. And if we build out and we put more emphasis on home ownership, you will allow that flow to go because those families that are looking to own, they will be able to graduate and move on, right? Allowing that family behind them to graduate and move on and so forth. So I think that's the answer for
It's like, how do you not enjoy what you do, right? You're really helping people on their journey, and then, as you mentioned, they become successful and they just want to give back.
always.
And that's kind of the life that you're in, right? Someone gave you an opportunity, so you wanted to give someone else an opportunity. I dealt with adoption and sexual abuse. I want to be the voice to others and let them know they're not alone in this world, that there's still opportunity. You just got to find the right resources, the right people that I would be willing to listen and execute at the same time. Um, and I think what's kind of going with nonprofits, and you really hit it on the head the last time we spoke, is that they need that startup energy,
Hmm.
because they still living to me almost like in past times, right?
Hmm.
What does that look like? Why did you even say that? Is that an experience that you have, or are you seeing things that is like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is totally startup energy because it's startup energy, but without the resources, right? So it's hard when you're so deep in the weeds, when you're so deep in the mission, to
Hmm.
be able to say, hold on, let me back up, let me get back to like that 30,000 square foot level, and are we doing this the right way, right? Are we being as efficient as we can be, right? When you're so constrained and you're so lean, and everyone's wearing so many hats, it's hard to find that dedicated time, but it's so important, right? Because what you're missing out on when you don't do that is the ability to see, well, wait a second, is there new technology that we could be using to help
Hmm.
streamline certain processes? Are we making sure that we're reflecting back and making the impact that we want to make, right? Can we be making a bigger impact if we built in coalition, right? If we found other partners to help us in this mission. And so
Hmm.
I think that part, we're always going to be, nonprofits will always be scrappy. It's just that's the way we operate. Again, we're not bottom line driven. We're not about, our goal is always how do you impact more families? How do you broaden your reach to
Yeah.
be able to help serve more? Um, and I think sometimes what's left behind is realizing that on the back end, how do you streamline to give yourself more time to think that way?
And you mentioned, just evolving. You mentioned technology. Word on the street is that AI is a new tool that everyone's trying to incorporate, right? How are we incorporating AI, the technology itself? You speak to some leaders, and there's kind of a fear in it. I
Yeah.
actually was very surprised. I spoke to my mom yesterday. My mom is 63 years old, and I was like, "Ma, you ever use ChatGPT?" And she's like, "What?" I said, "ChatGPT," and she says, "¿Qué es eso?" And I'm like, "Never mind. I guess you never used it." So I was showing her, and she's like, "Wow, you really use this?" I'm like, "Yeah, all the time." And it is something that people do live in fear because of safety reasons. Completely understandable there. But
Mhm.
I'm seeing that a lot of people are implementing it, so now they get to do more of what they want, and especially in the nonprofit world,
Mhm.
where we really get to do more of what we want, and we can automate it in AI some of the things that are just heavy on time. You know, that
Mhm.
same old admin work that no who loves to do admin work, to be quite honest with you. But what is your thoughts on AI? Is that something that Habitat is looking at, or are you guys kind of dipping your toe in it? I would love to know where Habitat is kind of taking the AI world.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll talk specifically. Obviously, I'm speaking on behalf of New York City and Westchester. So because
Hmm.
the way we're structured, we're our own.
Different chapters, yeah, yeah.
Right, exactly. We're our own nonprofit, and so we have incorporated. We have our own AI policy because it's just you kind of have to live in the world you're in, right? And so to me, I think I do have a lot of trepidation on AI, and it's very new technology. And what does it mean? And what are you feeding it? You know, it's like good
Hmm.
data in, good data out, bad data in, bad data out. Um, but I think it would be a missed opportunity to say, well, we're not going to dabble our toes in that, especially if there are things, to your point, Efrain, that allow us to be more efficient, right?
Yep.
The not to me personally, and we'll see like 10 years from now, right? If it's two AI, Efrain's and Sabrina's talking.
That'd be
Um,
crazy.
but I cannot envision a world where I think AI, where it is so helpful and useful, is on the technical automation side. When it comes to what nonprofits specialize in, which is that people piece and the
Hmm.
social cue and building relationships and building trust, to leave that in the hands of something like an AI, to me is a disservice, right, to the families that we serve. But to allow us to get more time to do that work while AI works on things like administrative tasks, like putting together minutes for a meeting, like
Yeah.
making sure we're staying on top of action items, like scheduling. And that to me makes a lot of sense because all of a sudden, to my point earlier, instead of us wearing seven hats, maybe we can wear six and
Yeah.
ChatGPT wears one, right? And that allows us to really invest our time where it's most needed. Um, and so we have put, but how do you do that responsibly? So we put together a very thoughtful AI policy, taking cases from from the tech sector to other, national nonprofits to see what they're doing, and just making sure that we're being very cautious, right? That we're not
Hmm.
providing sensitive data to Chat GPT that can then be used in ways that maybe we're not aware of right now.
Yeah.
And so being very, very responsible with it, I think, is critical. But I also think it's a tool that is going to, it has already changed the game in so many ways.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that nonprofits have a lot of data if done correctly. Nonprofits should have a lot of data. So for your to board, your board or your community to be able to reach out instantly and get accurate information, like that's kind of mind blowing
Mhm.
because it would take now sometimes call Sabrina, call this person, and now we're all calling three, four people. Probably forgot to call back the person at this point, But if we can do things that now is like we can help that out of sight, out of mind. 'Cause I think
Right,
that's another situation, right? Is that how do we continue to be in the face of someone and let them know that we exist, not just in a time of need, but in a time of giving.
right.
Because everyone always knows when you need something, everyone finds the resources. But what happens when it's time to give? And
Hmm.
I think that if we're not reaching out to people like, hey, I know you told me, because being a part of a nonprofit, I hear people say, I would always want to donate, but you have to remind me. Okay, so how do we do that? And I think that organizations I'm seeing helping other, nonprofit leaders where I'm having these conversations or through coaching is that they're now implementing social media. So just think about it. We
Right,
now are implementing social media. To me, if you're not implementing AI, you are left behind because social media should have been
right,
a part of your marketing, part of your game plan a long time ago,
right.
because that's how you stay relevant. So I do love the AI. I love how people are using it. I
Hmm.
do feel that there is a safety measure there, and I honestly think that when people think AI is going to take away jobs, I think people that understand AI and, as you mentioned, know how to get good data back out, not just any data. I need good information.
Hmm.
So I think those are the people that are going to be replacing. And as you mentioned as well, yeah, I'd never see a robot taking place of a human interaction.
Hmm.
Because listen, I speak to my AI all the time, Sabrina. Okay, and I have good conversations, but there's nothing but getting a laughter, just
Right,
seeing
right,
somebody different from across the world. I
right.
just can't see me talking to a robot 24/7.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I think
don't
at the
know.
end, so long as like I think that's it. I think, Efrain, that's it. It's just remembering how important human connection is. Because,
Hmm.
and I do too. I'd be lying if I said I don't have my conversations with these AIs, which are very warm. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's AI, right? It's a robot. So it's
Hmm.
making sure the emphasis on human connection is always there.
I love it. Do you feel like there's any like surprising AI actually freed up space for your team? Like, is there anything that you guys implemented and you just really felt that, oh my God, this is good?
Oh my gosh. I think from like having it take track of meeting minutes and action items, right? Because I think that's the part that it's the follow up, right? That
Hmm.
is something that's so easily forgotten. And having it be able to really quickly, comprehensively say, okay, this is what everyone's working on. And then you measure progress off of that, game changer for us. I think the other place is gathering. There is, in the housing world, it is so
Hmm.
broad and there is so much happening at any given time. So being able to go into a prompt and say, gather all of the news for each day and deliver it in the morning, right? um, and be able to like quickly conglomerate, what is happening in the housing space across, the city or the country. The amount of time that saves somebody from just Google searching, right,
Hmm.
is huge. So I think there's those are a lot of little ways, but I think that will continue to evolve.
Nah, the big the big one that you just said is and I don't. That's like I take minutes in as a president, but I can't even imagine someone sitting there just taking minutes. Like you want to get involved, but you can't miss something.
Right,
Like what did she
right,
just say? Hey, what did she say?
right.
So I spoke to my secretary. I was like, I know you don't really like to do this. You're just doing it because for me. But listen, why don't you just use AI? That way you don't have to do that. And you could just take that, put it like prompt it so it gives you exactly time and time again organized. I think it's the funniest thing. I recently did. We provided scholarships for my old high school. It was like 15 scholarships. So we
Mhm.
had to write a script for each child. So it wasn't my responsibility, but it was another lady's responsibility. And I'm like, hey, have you ever used ChatGPT? And she's like, no, but I'm willing to learn. She's like 70 something years old. So I'm showing her this, and she's like, oh my God. Like she's just in awe of what it's doing. And whatever, I get on stage and I'm giving these, kid after kid. And another board member that's there, he's like, yo, Efrain, that was the best. Did you write all those? Those were so good. And I started laughing. I said, no, ChatGPT did. And he's looking at me like, oh my God. But it's that as long as you have good data and you prompt
Yeah,
it well, it just sounds so good. And then to make it sound in your own voice. And I think that's where people they see AI, they understand AI, but not really understand
right.
AI. Because if you could put it in your voice, I have one now. I think you mentioned to you a little bit about my assistant. My ChatGPT now it's in a workplace that she could use that same brain of ChatGPT to get a lot of my work done. So if
Hmm.
it's articles that need to be written, right, she could take a transcript from this conversation, go put in ChatGPT in my word, and says, "Hey, let's get an article on leadership," and it'll take
Hmm.
everything that we did. Like, come on, that's saving time and still showing up
Right,
as ourselves in reality, right?
right.
So I don't know. I'm a big fan of it. But let's
Mhm.
talk about people that they're listening. They just never volunteered, never donated, or really paid attention to this space. What's that one small act that can really ripple out if they start today?
Yeah, if I love that question because I think right now it's tough out there. It's a tough world and it can feel very overwhelming. It feels like it feels very disarming in the sense of like what do I even do? What can I even do, right?
Hmm.
Um I am so inspired by the collective activism, right, that we are seeing around the world. And one of the things that I'm just such a big proponent on is just do something. Nothing, there's no such thing as something too small, right? So whether that, and for Habitat, we have volunteer opportunities up in the Bronx, right? We, as big as Habitat is from a brand perspective, again, we operate independently in New York City and Westchester. So, for all intents and purposes, we are actually a small nonprofit in this space. So, every dollar that we receive is critical in order to be able to help more working class families. So, if you are
Hmm.
in a space where you feel like, you know what, I can donate, I want to make a difference, I want to be a part, I want to leave my mark on the New York City skyline, this is an amazing way to do it.
Yeah.
So donating monthly, right? Even if that's $5 a month, it makes such a difference, right? And so I would say just get out there, and these small acts of kindness, it's incredible what they can do, because that's how it all starts. It starts with you, right? And if you can find a way to donate, volunteer, or advocate for better housing justice,
Mm,
we constantly have different legislation that we're writing to better our housing laws. So advocate for them, right? Send a note, right? Make your voice heard. So I think there's so many different ways that folks
okay.
can support.
I'm gonna ask you a question so I can tell my neighbor this answer because he says, Efrain, I don't know if I can do electrician my whole life or like if that's what God wants me to do my whole life. And I said, well, you never know if you don't try anything different. And I said, you can start in the nonprofit space. That's my go-to all the time. It's like, yo,
Yes,
and I'm not saying that you have to leave your job, but you can volunteer 5 to 10 hours, right? So I think about
absolutely.
for the habitat, like how
Absolutely.
cool it would be to give his experience as an electrician, right? A master electrician, to say, yo, I want to be a part of that. Is that something that people can actually do?
Absolutely. We are always looking for skills based. One of the things we do, Efrain, is we work with workforce development nonprofits. So this is part of that coalition building where they are trained, right? They have OSHA certified training, they're carpenters, or they're, in the trades, plumbing,
Yeah.
HVAC, electricians, but they need that real world experience. Come to Habitat. We will give it to you. We're building so much. We're happy to use our site. We have an incredible construction team that has expertise as well. So you're not alone. They're going to be
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
They'll guide you through it, but it is something that we're always looking for, because every dollar that we save on that side
Yeah.
allows us to keep the house affordable for that family.
I love it. Yeah, I tell people all the time, there's a nonprofit out there for you.
A
Just
thousand
Google what you
percent.
love and put nonprofit, and I can guarantee you there's something there.
Absolutely.
He's a single man, so I tell him, I said, you never know. You know, doing this type of work, you might find the woman of your dreams, right? Like-minded people, you know.
Yeah,
He starts
a
laughing at me,
thousand
but
percent.
now I'm gonna tell him exactly what you said. Like, listen, she said they can utilize your experience, okay?
I'm gonna get in
Um,
contact right after this call.
I love this, Sabrina. We've been chatting it up for some time. Where can people find you? Where can connect with you? But also the social media for your local habitat.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I am incredibly active on LinkedIn. So come find me under Sabrina Lippman. Our website, habitatnycwc.org. You can kind of look at all of our socials and follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, through those. Efrain, you've gotten me excited. We are not on TikTok yet. And I think now with this AI, maybe we can find a way to get ourselves enough content to be
Listen,
on TikTok.
yeah, TikTok is it. TikTok is really cool. I jumped on TikTok about 2 years ago, and we talk about doing what you love. I love wrestling, so I used to watch wrestling for years, but especially in my later years as an adult, you just fall asleep on the couch, and it's a 3 hour show. I fall asleep. So I used to. I remember sometimes when I was at work overnight, I would watch this guy, and I wouldn't watch the show, but I would watch. I would listen to his commentary and listen to the match that way. Thought it was pretty cool. So as I continued to build the podcast out, I'm like, man, maybe I could build my own wrestling community. So I said, you know what? I wasn't a TikToker. I didn't know anything about TikTok. I said, I'm just gonna show up, right? It just show freaking up. So I showed up every Monday, every Friday, and even when my friends were making fun of me, like, "Yo, you still watch wrestling? You know it's fake, right?" Our response would be, "So is all the damn movies you watch, right?
Yeah.
So is all these shows you watch." But continue doing it, continue doing it. Sometimes not knowing why I was doing it. I mean, in my mind, it was to build community. Um, and wrestling for me when I was growing up was really a escape of reality of everything that was happening to me. The
Mm,
sexual abuse, the adoption, the feeling alone. You turn on TV and you see these superstars are greater than life. Like you're just
yeah.
so entertained. So to all that to be said, I as a young kid I always said, man, one day I want to do something with WWE. Right? That's as big as it gets. So I'm an extra on WWE TV. You know, holding back one of the wrestlers at my barbershop. At my barbershop, because my barber cuts celebrities' hair. Like, he called me, hey, they're going to be here today to do a scene. You want to show up? I said, yeah. Drove 45 minutes to be there, okay? So when they ask me, hey, do you want to,
Oh,
yeah, you know. But then I get people locally that say, "Hey, will you want to do commentary?" And the biggest thing was just showing up and doing what you do and staying consistent. Anytime someone says, "How did you get to 50,000 followers on TikTok?" I showed up and I
yeah.
stayed consistent. And I go live to this day still every Monday and every Friday. But the biggest win was recently. Mindset is everything, right? And when you listen to somebody's story, it could easily become your story, in a sense of your mind starts to absorb it and thinks that is your story.
Mhm.
And so I had a friend tell me something, and I'm already like in this kind of in my head, like, oh my god. I had another friend says, hey man, check your TikTok. I earned $5,000. Okay, like they paid me all in one $5,000 to do what I was already doing.
Wow.
So when you show up, so
Yeah.
TikTok, first of all, there's a lot of things to be done on TikTok, but it goes back to what we said earlier. If you just show up,
Yep.
don't chase the paycheck, chase the passion.
Yep.
I love wrestling, and I was doing it for free to build community, so people didn't have to watch wrestling alone. Because I get it. Sometimes people make fun of others that watch certain
Hmm.
things. So I show up, and I have a anywhere from like 50, 60s to maybe 12, 13 year olds that are in the group, and it's how do we build community where people can feel seen and heard. I try to read every single comment. Like I truly engage. So it's just kind of back to everything that we saying, man. Just
That's
chase what
exactly
you
right.
love. Just
And
chase what you
build,
love.
and I think, Efrain, if there's anything to take away from that, it's that community building, right? If
Hmm.
you do that community building, if that is where your heart is, the rest will fall into place.
Hmm.
But it is all about community. It really is.
This has
Ah,
been a good conversation. It's been a
yes,
good
it has.
conversation. Are you ready for the hot seat? We got one more question for you.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm ready.
All right. What's one lesson you learned from your parents' hustle that still shapes how you lead today, but
Oh,
you've never said out loud on a podcast? I mean,
oh,
maybe to
man.
anyone.
Whew. That's a good
Putting you
one,
on this hot seat.
Efrain.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Um, I've never said this live on a podcast, but I learned it from my dad. And it goes back because now, as CEO of a nonprofit, I find myself in a similar situation as entrepreneurs, right? That own kind of all of it, right?
Mhm.
My dad always, he would say when he walks in the door, right? After, it doesn't matter if it was a great day at the office, at the business, or a terrible day. He would always hang it up before
Mm,
and I appreciated that so much. He never let out his frustration in front of us. He never showed it. He was always just so
wow.
even keeled. And it is something that I still strive to be. It's hard, right? To just be able to hang it up. And
Hmm.
it's not about not showing it, but it's about realizing that you cannot let your frustration seep into your personal
Yeah.
from a professional side.
Yeah.
Um, and
That's
I
good.
think that is something that I still strive to continue to do.
Yeah. That's really good because I was complete opposite. My mom has 7 kids. She was a single mom, so now I get it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like you had 7 kids. Yeah, you did it by yourself. But she would show the frustration, and I didn't know when to ask her a question, when to not, when to approach her,
Yeah,
when to not. So I kind of always grew up just never asking.
right.
Now that I sit here and just say that, I'm thinking like, damn, maybe that's why the nonprofit world has been so hard. I hate asking, right? Because there's trauma to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even realize
Yep.
why
It's
something is
so
so hard.
subconscious. Yeah.
But if you go back and you really dig deeper, you
Hmm.
realize like, oh wait, there's actually something to that, right? So thank you
Absolutely.
for helping me just dig that up. Maybe that's why I hate asking. I am not a person, and maybe it's pride. Maybe it is what it is. As Hispanics, we just keep
Yeah.
it in our house and we don't go outside of that.
Yeah.
So it could be a little bit of everything, but I really appreciate that. What is your blind question for the next leader, though, Sabrina?
Ooh, okay. My blind question. You know what? I'll go along similar lines. I'd love to know for the next guest when they took a risk and whether it paid off. Like when
Ooh,
they took a big risk and how it paid off or didn't.
okay. I love it. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Sabrina, this has been a wonderful conversation. I always am so intrigued at how fast it goes. Like, this is almost a 45-minute conversation, but it felt like
But
a 5-minute
yes,
conversation. I feel like
it
I can do this with
was.
you for a long time. So I definitely appreciate your just being authentic, being yourself, and being vulnerable at times, to share those stories. So, guys, if you guys haven't already, make sure that you guys do connect with Sabrina over on LinkedIn, but also make sure you guys connect with them on social media as well and see what they're doing in their city. Okay, as she mentioned, Habitat for Humanity is different chapters. So we're talking about her city happening in New York City. We thank you. Make sure that you guys do comment and share. That's the only way that people actually know something is going on here and that this even exists and get to meet people like Sabrina, other leaders. I think that's great when when I see a woman leader of color as well that is getting to do this. Representation matters,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure that's big for you as well. Another young little girl that looks like you is going to like, wow, she's doing this. I can do it as well. So we thank you for your time, guys. This has been the Heart Hustle podcast. I'm Efrain. This is Sabrina. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Laters.
Thank you.